Hello and welcome back. So continuing on with this roundtable discussion over questing, Zach.
Right. Well, the first section that we had was quest categories and types. So if for those of you out there who are taking notes like good little students, let me jot some stuff down. So quest categories and types. And it's one of those things where those terms are so vague that I should really quickly delineate the two. I'm thinking of categories as really just two things. They're really only, when you really boil it down, two different categories. We have, well, okay, not just two. Well, there's more than that. If I had to make it down to two, I would say that there are designer-based quests and there are player-based quests. But I've actually got a couple more categories than that to push things a little bit further. First off, we have our category which consists of what I'm just calling your standard quest chains. And if you've ever played any role-playing game that has a questing system, you're already familiar with this. This is where you've got a series of different jobs that you do that are all tied together through some sort of a plot that gets explored and pushes you either through the story or through the world or through the leveling experience for your character. So just some quick notes on these. These are designer constructed. So we have to think about these as the game's developers. These are going to drive story. Of course, the chain system continues on here. Kind of one leads into the next. Forward progression, however you want to say that. These need to be, generally, I think these need to be spaced out to promote character development. That's one of the things that I do really appreciate about World of Warcraft, though you can really get ahead of the curve and skip vast areas depending on how you do it, but the quest chains really do push you through the entire process of getting up to max level if you want them to. You can just follow quest chains and get all the way up there, and that shows that they really put a lot of work into their quest chain system, and I appreciate that. But it should also promote exploration. So actually, let me not put that on the same line. Meaning that,
yeah, because the two don't necessarily come hand in hand.
Yeah, I'd like to see quest chains act as a device to make people go to different zones and see different parts of the world, as opposed to a lot of the work being done just in one area. And to me, like, that's kind of how EVE Online feels, where you get a few quests out of the way pretty early on, but EVE really isn't about questing at all. It's more about taking part in this big player-driven world and economy. So that's my first category. We haven't even discussed types yet. So if you're wondering what a type is, don't worry. All good things to those who wait. So is there anything that, before I move on to the next category, is there anything that Nelson or Gavin or even Jason you want to throw in at this point? While I've still got room to add it in.
Well, do you have the concept of side quests anywhere?
Technically, no, but I would call those quest chains in and of themselves. Just maybe not ones that are pivotal to the story. I mean, I can jot it in here.
Well, I mean, just in general, though, I personally like the idea of side quests, but I also like those side quests not require that you have to walk up to every NPC and press the E button to find, if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
So, I mean, I could sit and talk about what I like about side quests and stuff, so that might be something to talk about.
Actually, that sounds like something that could really work its way into our overall questing stipulations. I mean, if there are things about questing in general that irritate you.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, I'm open to other thoughts.
Okay, that's cool. You've jotted it down, so we can come back to this.
All right.
Because right now you're just, again, high-level outline.
Yeah, this starts pretty high and gets kind of deep. So, next we have algorithmically created quests. Now, if any of you out there are gamers, RPG gamers, hopefully the very idea should at least scare you a little bit, because you have to be careful about these. Sometimes an algorithmically created quest system goes a long way toward making a game feel very cardboard cutout. So if this gets implemented, it's going to have to be implemented fairly well. But some basic ideas. These are going to be given by NPCs. Of course, so will quest chains, but I just wanted to write this down. These are going to have to be, by their nature, fairly generic.
Can they be given by an NPC even if you're not like this? I'm just saying words that appear in my head.
Of course,
which could be potentially very scary. If you're walking around and maybe you're heading towards a city or something, and then you get, can you ever get called, or I guess called by an NPC as you're exploring the world to go do something that's relevant to the area that you're in, so that maybe it feels less like you went in and you got a bunch of quests, but instead you're out in the wilderness and all of a sudden
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things I loved about Eve, when all of a sudden I'd get email and be like, "What's this?"
Oh, I miss all those too. By the time I find that email, they've already written me like twice, and finally just said, "Hey, you know what? I hate you for not responding to me, and if you ever show your face around here again." So.
Yeah, but I just think it'd be cool, because then you could look at that quest. You can look at where the endpoint is. If it's like because this would be a good thing for generic quests, collection, because then it's a little bit more interactive than going somewhere to say, okay, transport this item here. But as you're out in the wilderness, you have to make a decision. Do I alter my course? Is this a place I'm already going? Blah, blah, blah. It's a chance to make a little bit of extra money and so on.
Yeah,
I think also with the sort of world we're aiming for, these would go a long way towards just avoiding the repetitive nature of things like what the hell is it when you're picking flowers or
Grinding?
Yeah, because we're going to have all these random little villages and towns that are going to be populated by an astonishing range of people to give quests. So actually, as long as the algorithm takes into account enough detail, you can go a long way towards hiding the fact that it is giving out these generic quests.
I mean, I think eventually folks are going to get used to it, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. And one of the things that I had kind of jotted down here were possible factors under which these could be given, and I'm sure we could spend probably an entire video just listing these off. But just some things to get your brains rolling. We have things like local inventory, so kind of like supply-demand driven. Or if you're doing the persistent world thing, this could be based on the current control state.
Particularly in border areas and such.
Right. So
there's a lot of back and forth.
If the bad guys, with finger quotes, have control, maybe different quests suddenly start appearing. Or let's see, the market price or rarity of certain goods. So that kind of ties back into supply-demand, so I'm just going to put supply-demand, even if this is a little redundant.
And the key thing, I think, with these is the granularity of it.
Right.
You just got to get in. I mean, it's the sort of huge hierarchies of essentially if this, then that.
Right.
In the algorithm, comes down to what season is it? What is there been a drought?
Sure.
Those sorts of factors as well.
Well, sure. You could even throw in things like environmental factors.
And like you say, this could go on. This could be a whole video in its own. Just structuring a tree of
basically
everything.
Writing the underlying structure of the algorithm that would drive the questing could take a good long while. So that's just that's two of our options right there, and we're already about. Let me wrap up just a couple of things here on algorithmically created quests, and then we can move on to some of the other categories. Again, we haven't even made it to types yet, but that's okay. What I'm going to do, though, because I'm running out of room vertically, I'm going to continue what I'm writing here about my algorithmically created quests over here.
What if you just change the image size and just stretch it out so that you can just keep on going down if you want?
Oh, you mean just like increase my...
Yeah, if you just edit your image size.
Here I go.
Or canvas size, yeah. That's what I mean.
I was all over it.
Yeah.
God, I thought you knew how to use Photoshop, Zach.
I don't, Nelson. I'm totally making this up off the top of my head, and I appreciate you not drawing any more attention to that than you absolutely have to. Thank you very much for playing. All right, and we'll nuke that out, so this should all be nice and clean and easy and happy, and then I can get back right over here to writing just like nothing ever happened.
That's right.
Okay, so still, let's kind of get away from possible factors. Again, we could go on about that. Something I thought would be neat, and this is just, I wrote it in here simply for that purpose. It would be very cool if you could ask random NPCs if they had any work. Go ahead, spit it out.
I love it.
Oh, that brings back bad memories.
Okay, well, I'll tell you where I got the idea. One of the cool things that I did like about Oblivion was you could ask everybody out there if they'd heard any local rumors, which I always thought was a weird thing to ask people, because the highlight topic was just rumors. You know, it's like they could have taken just 4 more seconds and written out, you know, any interesting news, you know, but no, they said rumors, and they would all give you some really weird responses. A lot of times they meant absolutely nothing, but then occasionally they would give you a tip-off on a side quest. And then if you kept on asking, eventually you could actually get some pretty cool quests out of it. But I was wondering, what if you took that and applied that to actually finding a job in the world? Like you could just grab somebody and say, hey, do you have any work that you need done?
My only issue with that, and I kind of said something similar. I kind of hinted at it with the side or the quest being spontaneously delivered, is that I personally don't like going through a room of 50 NPCs and asking them over and over and over again if they have any work. I just personally don't like that. If there's enough demand, if quests can be spontaneously delivered, and there's enough demand that people have about being able to ask NPCs for jobs, then sure. But I personally don't like it.
I would say with this that you'd want a dual system whereby there would be, because you have the concept of the central job database anyway.
Yes.
And that seems a logical. There's, you know, even in the small village, you've got a notice board outside the church with what's on in the village, and so there would be a central place in any sort of substantial community where you could find local work. But equally, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's a real pain to have to go to the city to find work. So it should be equally possible. You know, if Farmer Giles has advertised that he needs some wolves removing from his farm on the local job board, but you happen to run into Farmer Giles, he'll ask you the same thing if nobody's already accepted it by the...
Sure, now that's entirely possible. If you actually
because that obviates the problems both ways. It
Right.
stops you having to go to the NPCs, but equally means if you just run across someone at random, you might go, hell, I'll take a break and do a quest.
Sure. I mean, if you've actually set up a system by which the NPCs really did have driving factors and felt a bit like real people, where an NPC is putting a job up on the job board because they really need that job done, then you could actually go get that job from the job board. Or if you happen to bump into that particular NPC, say, hey, you got any work? And they're like, actually, you know what? Earlier today, I just put random job X up on the job board.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting. So maybe not every single person, but it's just one of those things where I just wanted to throw it in. I did specify just kind of random people. I don't necessarily think you should be able to ask every single person, but I wanted to get the idea out there, see what sticks. Something else, and this ties a little bit into just the world of NPCs in general, but every single topic we have is going to tie probably into 50 other topics anyway. Since we're already looking at there being significant changes to the world based on time of day, it follows that, of course, NPCs will also change. Some people go to bed eventually in a perfect world. It also follows from there that different jobs should be available. And I realize this kind of already touches on environmental factors, but I really think time of day could be a nice factor in changing the availability of jobs.
No, I'm definitely a big fan of that.
Actually,
Certainly, you're more likely to find a sneak thief in the middle of the night in a dingy cellar than you are in a
Broad daylight.
theater in broad daylight. Yeah, exactly.
well, I think that might.
As a facile example, but
Well,
before you jump on it,
Spit it out,
no.
Nelson.
Okay, so jobs that aren't technically legal, we still want those, right?
Sure. Yes.
I think that time of day could possibly make the asking of random NPCs more viable option and actually more rewarding. Because if you go and you see a shady character standing outside of a bar or something, and he's shifting, or I don't know.
Then he's a cop, just so you know.
Well, whatever. You see somebody who there's some sort of visual cue as to this person's shadiness.
Yes, wearing a sandwich board. This is not a cop.
A big bag with swag written on it.
That's right.
Anyways, Nelson.
And you go up to that person, you ask them if they have any quests. These people obviously will only come out at night, and they could be the ones that offer, assassination jobs and thievery and stuff like that.
The stuff that you just shouldn't be talking about.
Actually, that comes down to your under possible factors. One of your major headings needs to go there, which is reputation.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because the next thing I have on my list is reputation-based quests.
That would be key in that particular situation.
Yep. And reputation-based questing, I think, is going to be absolutely critical, meaning that certain tasks are only going to be given to those with a high enough reputation with a certain faction. Also, and let me kind of jot that down. So, reputation could affect quest availability, of course. I mean, if you're, Molly Do-Gooder in the game, and there's a guy who's got a quest for a really, really dirty job, if you got a rep for being a good guy, they're probably not going to trust you with that kind of quest.
Yeah, they're going to assume it's set up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, get out of my face.
But is there any way that you could disguise yourself?
I haven't decided that yet. We're just talking about questing. Now, the next thing, and this goes further into
I just to add in real quick, if you don't mind, to answer your question, Nelson, I would sure hope so. I think identity theft would be awesome, since we are talking about a world where there's hacking and a lot of illegal underground stuff going on, and with corporations and all. Identity theft would be very cool.
So something that just popped, just so I don't forget. I just want to say it, but being able to screw over your quest givers. I think that would be lots of fun. And
In what way?
It would hurt your reputation. Oh, well, like a collection quest where you're supposed to go collect 5,000 credits from someone, but then you have to return, 4,000. But you can just walk away with that 5,000, and then you just lose reputation.
Well, yeah, you fail the quest.
Or maybe some way that you can turn in criminals that have offered you jobs or shady jobs or something. And I know that starts to get very complicated, but
turn in 5,000 counterfeit dollars.
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah. There's definitely opportunities there for working some nice deals, but I don't know. It strikes me it could break the game quite easily. The ability to fundamentally, particularly with things like quest chains. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to be careful how you went about it, but I think it's probably getting more detailed than you wanted to.
I completely agree with you, though, Gavin, and Nelson even acknowledged it, and that is that, to pull something like this off would get very complicated.
Well, the next thing I had, after reputation affecting quest availability, and this is a note that kind of foreshadows something that'll be coming up very shortly, is if you screw up reputation-based quests too often, like if you really wrong a faction, if you really, like in all caps, really wrong a faction, Nelson, by turning in counterfeit bills, and especially if it's the right kind of faction, you may end up with a bounty on your head.
And while we're still lightly on the subject,
that would be an NPC bounty.
I do think, especially in the quest editor system, I think it's a good idea, Nelson, to be able to screw over some quest givers. Where you've got to go to some part of town, say you're doing a shady quest, and you've got to pick up this particular bottle, this chemical. It's in this bottle that they need, but you're kind of like working two sides of the fence, where this other corporation would be willing to pay you a lot more money, but this first corporation gave you the proper credentials that you need to get access to the guy that's going to give you the stuff to begin with. So the other corporation tells you that if you get access to this stuff and bring it to them, basically they could give you something that you could turn in as a counterfeit.
Right.
So
Well, like, okay, you break into the corporation, you're going to steal this jar of stuff, and then all the doors lock down. You basically get totally stunned down, and a guy walks in. Says, very good. You made it this far. I'm going to make you a deal. If you take this back to your employer instead, I'll pay you double. They're not going to like it, but you will make a whole lot more money. You have 3 seconds to decide. And you can blow him away if you want to, finish your original quest and forget about it. Or you can screw over the guy who gave you that quest chain,
And
thereby allowing this other
interesting thing-
corporation to undermine the efforts.
And the interesting thing about what you're discussing, somebody may think, why didn't the guy just come in and get the stuff to begin with? But it's actually deeper than that. It could have been a setup. Where
Right.
that guy's wanting to get some sort of chemical back over.
you could trace that back as far as you want. Corporation who actually has the stuff has been wanting to get this thorn out of their side for a long time, so they've steadily been leaking information out that this new chemical was going to be available in their labs on this one night to see who bit. Looked like he did bite. Awesome. So we'll hand him back this different version so that we can route him out and blow him away.
Right.
Yeah, you could have all kinds of fun with that.
Yeah, and I actually got some of the idea from Deus Ex,
Right.
Human Revolution, where there are a lot of instances like that where you constantly are questioning, as far as you going through these story quests, you're constantly questioning, whose side am I going to be on? Who's offering the most money? Who's offering the most reward? Who's the most moral person?
Right. Who's right and who's wrong?
And that sort of upset me earlier, and I already told you why that upset me, because the moral choice actually gave you an equal reward to the non-moral choice, but it shouldn't.
That is a key point. There should be good aspects both ways, but there should be bad aspects both ways, and it should genuinely make a difference which you choose if you're going to go that route with quests. Because there is nothing more frustrating than sitting there and you're presented with this option and you make a conscious decision and actually work through in your mind what would be the way you want to go and how you're going to play a character, only to find that the next time you play it, you get the exact same result from doing the opposite thing.
Yeah, that irritates me.
All right. Well, that's everything that I have over the categories for basically game-based quests that are not created by a player.
And it's also a really good stopping point since we're 22 minutes in or so.
Right.
So let's go ahead and bring this video to a close, and we'll come back in the next and continue on with the next section. Thanks, guys.